Okay. Hey everybody, I'm so excited to be doing this. I know it's totally different than normal San Diego Comic-Con, but you know, we roll with the punches. It's 2020. So I'm so excited to welcome every single lady on this panel today. Of course, we are joined by Aubrey Lee, VP of TV at Lord & Miller. Yay. I want us, I'm like clapping for everybody.
That's nice.
We're in gallery. Everyone can see us all. We've got Sam Crawley, Director of Development at Skybound Entertainment. Yay. Jeannette Francis, Creative Executive at Bad Robot Productions. Ooh. I'm just going to keep clapping for you guys all, so I'll be the awkward one who does it by herself.
Should I do the clapping emoji reaction on my screen?
Yes, you can. Gray Cusack, Creative Executive at E1. Woo. Nikki Baida, VP of Features at Lord Miller.
Woo. Yay. Co-workers.
And we have got Mette Norkjaer, who she is the one who brought us all together on our very first panel. So I feel like she gets a huge round of applause. She's an executive at Boom Studios. So yay, creative exec, woohoo! All right, so now that we've gotten through all of that and I said all their titles and stuff, I want to really jump into it because I know there's a lot of people who are watching that may not know exactly what those titles mean. I know when I first met everybody, I was like, I don't exactly know what that means that you're doing. So if you guys kind of want to just go through, and Mette, we can start with you. What exactly do you do? And kind of, if you want to give a little background of like how you got into it in the first place.
Yeah, sure. So I'm originally from Denmark, and I moved over to LA about 6 years ago to start grad school at USC, where I did a producing MFA. And from there, I kind of got my first job while I was still in school at Boom Studios, started as an assistant and worked for the film side. And then I slowly worked my way up, and now I'm a creative executive, which basically means that I'm constantly looking for like writers, directors, talent to basically adapt our comic books into movies and TV shows. That's like that in a nutshell.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And since we're in this Brady Bunch setup, I kind of feel like you guys should just like toss it to each other and be like, Mette, I gave my background. I'm gonna toss it over too.
Great. I'm gonna go to Nikki.
Do we all see each other in the same arrangement?
No.
I don't think so.
I'm next to Mette though. So
you're next to me too.
On my screen.
Yeah, on my screen. Okay. Just throw it to someone else.
Nikki, get away because you're right next to me.
Yeah. I got my start as a page at Paramount Pictures a whole decade ago, where I wore a tie and khakis and gave tours on a golf cart. Great time.
Love it.
Kind of my foot in the door job. Worked in post-production for a while, and then I went to development at Paramount. Then I went to a company called Genre Films, run by Simon Kinberg. And now I've been at Lord Miller, became Aubrey's coworker about 10 months ago now. And it's been great.
I want to just bring it up because I think it's so cool that we went from, this is our third time doing a panel of us all together. And Nikki, you were not working with her before. And now it's like, it's so awesome to get to see just how this panel has even brought people together at work. Not just
pretty amazing.
And it's nice because we're in different departments. So we get to show both sides of the company, really.
Exactly.
Represent them. Who's next?
Aubrey.
Oh, okay.
Below me.
Me. I'm Aubrey Lee. I went to Chapman Film School in Orange County. I did a lot of interning while I was in school. My first job I got after an internship was at Ridley Scott's company, Scott Free. And I also worked at ICM for a bit, which is an agency. And then I went to Scott Stuber's company when he had a production company on the Universal lot before he went to Netflix, where I actually worked with Matt. And then Sam also has worked there, so we'll talk about that probably a little bit. That production company was called Bluegrass at the time. And then I realized I wanted to get into TV. I was mostly doing feature stuff at the time. And my first TV job was being the assistant on the TV side of Lord Miller, which I got that job almost 5 years ago. So I've been with the guys since then. Now I'm the vice president of TV, which is really exciting and cool. It's a very small company, really small TV department especially. So it's been a really great experience to find a place that I really like working and like move up at that company. Yeah, I think that's it. Was that all I was supposed to talk about? I forgot. I'm going to throw it to Jeannette.
Well, thank you, Aubrey. So many of our paths overlap at this point. Mette and I both worked together at James Wan's company, Atomic Monster.
I was Jeanette's intern, guys. That's
cool.
I hope I was nice.
You were the best boss.
Oh my God, thank you. You're the best intern.
It's weird how that works out, isn't it?
It's the best. So for me, like I took an unpaid internship sort of through my college, and then spent my summer out here commuting from Silver Lake to Santa Monica on the bus and like walking around. And, you know, just thankfully, you know, my boss from the internship ended up putting my resume in at WME when I graduated, and I took that job, and I ended up, you know, sort of gravitating immediately towards development as soon as I knew that, you know, the job that I do now exists. And so sort of through a string of jobs at production companies, and I spent a stint at STX Films, and just sort of getting experience, it sort of led me to where I am now at Bad Robot on the film side.
I feel like I didn't correctly identify like what I do as a job, which is what the other piece I was supposed to do. Because you just reminded me, Jeannette. Because I don't think a lot of people know what development executives do, and that's mostly what all of us are technically doing at the moment. So, I mean, at least for me on the TV side, I'm responsible for like finding new projects for our company to develop. I work on developing those projects. I think we all kind of do a version of the same thing, so I should say it this way for everyone. But I also am responsible for like making sure our projects that are in production and development are going smoothly all the way through the process.
And I think we can get into it like a little bit more with each person too when you talk a little bit more about your specific companies. But I think development for each of you, it's a similar thing, but there's different ways of going about it, from comic books or where there's already IP, or I know that we've talked a lot about this over the last year, but looking for diverse writers and creators and things and kind of developing around that. So we can get into that a little bit too, but I want to get to Sam and Gray quick here too. So Sam, why don't you go next? Because on my camera, you're next to Aubrey.
Oh.
So I actually started out at Lionsgate in publicity, and after a year of that, quickly realized that wasn't exactly what I wanted to do. So desperately tried to find my way to development and got an assistant job at Universal. Wanted to make sure I got both the studio and the production company side of things to understand where I wanted to go in my career. So after that, I worked at Bluegrass as an assistant, and then made the jump to creative executive at Brownstone Productions, which is Elizabeth Banks's company. Knew at that point I definitely wanted to keep going the producer route. And comics have been my number one love. So Skybound was sort of a dream company that I had targeted early in my career. And the opportunity came up for me to move over there as a DOD. And that's where I'm now. And it's incredible. And I would say, alike to Mette, the majority of my focus is adapting comic books to film and TV shows.
Also, I'm just going to throw in there DOD because we don't have like a pop-up screen, Director of Development.
Yes. Now I'll send it to Gray.
How I got a foot in the door. When I was 16, a movie came to town in Boston called The Departed, and I called the production office every day until they allowed me to intern, and had a great time. And then decided I really wanted to be in the movie, so I ended up interning and working with those people on a few movies. Before the Devil Knows You're Dead, The Town, and then kind of, but didn't know exactly where in the film industry I wanted to be. I made movies, and I was still learning about it. I ran a film society in high school and then in college as well, and worked for the Telluride Film Festival through that. And then after being a broke filmmaker in New York after college, I decided to come out here for grad school at SC for production. And through a class about women in film, Hannah Minghella came to speak, who at the time was at TriStar and is now Jeanette's boss, Bad Robot. And she came to speak, and I talked about her job, and I had no idea that development exec was really a job before then, and was like, that sounds really cool. And through my professors, got an entry-level gig at the Secret Hideout in 2015. I was there for a year while they were building out the Monsters universe with The Mummy. And then went to Fox 2000 to work for my current boss, Greg Meridian, And then he was hired as the president of Allspark Pictures of Hasbro Studios 2.5 years ago, and I came over with him, building out our relationship with Paramount beyond the Transformers and G.I. Joe franchises, and to really mine the Hasbro library and find tentpole movies in this 5-year co-fi deal that we had with Paramount. So my job, like many of these ladies, is very much about mining IP and figuring out, usually with franchises like Dungeons & Dragons, G.I. Joe, Transformers, it's really about figuring out which storyline and which characters. But then on the opposite side, you have properties more like Monopoly, Game of Life, or Play-Doh that have less inherent story or characters. So with those, it's more about brainstorming and finding the story that is unique and inherent to the brand. So we're making movies for the sake of making movies with brands included in them.
So I know, obviously between just the group here, there's so much crossover and networking and stuff. I know that's a huge part of kind of getting into the industry and getting to know people and moving throughout it. And, people hear about it so much. It's about who you know in Hollywood. And I think that that's something where, for me specifically, I know that it is such a positive thing, because you do end up at different jobs through friendships, and, someone knows of an opening and they're like, oh my God, this person would be perfect. But I think some of the cool stuff too is like you guys mentioning the little creative things that you came up with to do. Do you guys have any tips that you could give to people watching about how to get into the industry?
Yeah, Sam.
I mean, this one is definitely a little less traditional, but I think it definitely worked for me. I think targeting companies that make the type of movies or TV shows that you want to work on, and then literally looking it up to see who they are and who, either an assistant, a creative exec, a director of development, who those people are, and cold calling them or cold emailing them or finding them on Instagram. Or actually, maybe not that. That may be too far. But that's what I did when I knew I wanted to end up at Skybound. I knew that was my dream company. And I cold called the guy that previously had my job. And I just said, hey, we should be friends because I'm going to work at your company one day. And he said, great, let's be friends. And then we had a great friendship. I've known him now for like 4 or 5 years. And he called me a year and a half ago to say, okay, I'm moving on. It's time to come in. And that's how I ended up where I am now, which is, I think, a great way to, start looking. And it worked for me. So.
Yeah. Sorry.
Oh, so great. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's really about putting yourself out there. Everybody really does want to help. And if you have a clear sense of what you want for yourself as a writer, director, executive, if you have a clear sense and you go to enough people and call enough people to say that that's what you want, I do think that you will eventually get the opportunity.
I'm sorry, Greg.
Go ahead.
I was gonna say, it's also, like Gray was saying, telling everyone what you want, but not just people that you know who might be able to help you immediately. I always tell people, tell every single person in your life what you want to do. Tell your hairstylist, tell your cousin's best friend. You never know who's gonna have that right connection to help you get in the door. My very first job in this industry, I was a PA on the show Cupcake Wars on the Food Network on the first season. And I got that job through literally like 3 friends removed because I had a friend tell another friend I was looking for a job.
Yeah, I think
and I was covered in cupcakes for 6 weeks.
Sounds wonderful.
I want to see a photo of this along with the page photo.
Yes. I was going to say, I think, and on that note, I think keeping those relationships, like we have done a good job as a group, I think, over the past year that we've been talking about these things. Continuing to tell each other when like jobs are opening up. I wouldn't have the job at Lord Miller that I have now if it weren't for a friend of mine from college who had interviewed to work for Phil and Chris, didn't get the job, but they reached out to him later when they were like, we're looking for a TV assistant. And I had told him over I was complaining to him about like how I wanted to get into TV, but I didn't know like where. And I was a huge fan of Phil and Chris. He knew that. He knew I wanted to get into TV. He was like, I have a friend who like is perfect for that. And so I wouldn't have gotten this job if I hadn't like talked to him about it ahead of time. So I think that's really good advice, to just tell everyone and be very clear I mean, it's okay to not know what you want to do yet, and you can ask people for like informationals if you like need help figuring out what is right for you. But it's always good to like know what companies you like, to know what kinds of content you want to work on, so you can target them, like Sam was saying. Because I also used to do that constantly. I would just like find out who produced all the shows and movies that I liked, and then I would like try to see if I could get it in like a hold of anyone over there.
Yeah. I think that's so smart and so true, and I agree with what everybody said. And I think to that point, I think it's so important to figure out what it is you want to do. I had 2 gap years after high school because I had no idea what path I was going to take, and during that time, I just tried to like immerse myself as much as possible in like, you know, interning or like being on sets of short films and like understanding what different people do on a set and like in the development process. And then it wasn't until I got to like college that I realized that producing was an actual path and like the development side of, or creative producing, if you will. And I think just makes as much stuff as you can, be writing constantly if that's the route you want to go, or if that's your dream. Because I think when you start pursuing those passions, you're going to be networking simultaneously, and you might actually end up having more ins to the entertainment industry than you might realize at first.
Totally.
Yeah, I think a big thing I would add is just being genuine. Like,
Yeah.
that, you know, where it's, if you do reach out to someone via Instagram, because I have for sure done that, I think like you can tell if someone's doing it in a genuine way, if they're really passionate about something. So my biggest suggestion to people always is, even if you don't know exactly what you want, but you have some idea and you're passionate about something, whether it's genre or, you know the piece of it that you like, but maybe not everything. I think that just makes a massive, that opens the door so much if people know that you are being genuine in what you're asking, not just trying to get a leg up, and I think that, I think even people have come up to you guys at some of the other panels and asked questions and, has opened the door for dialogue between you and people. But Jeannette, what were you going to say about kind of getting your foot in the door stuff?
Oh, I agree with you. I think the human piece of it can't sort of be overstated. Speaking from my personal career trajectory, every single job that I've ever gotten, someone put me up for. Mm-hmm. Sort of like the cold resume upload is not so much a thing that happens successfully, I think, in the entertainment industry. And it's so much better if you can reach out, make that connection, know someone. And then once you're in the door, whether it's an internship that's unpaid or an assistant job, really sort of put your best foot forward and value not only the people above you in those companies, but the people next to you, or even below, or, even your intern, like Mette, like we obviously are, contemporaries and continue to work together. And I think that all ships rise if the people involved in, sort of having these interactions, whether it's we're scheduling something together or we're working on a project. I think it's really invaluable to make sure that you just make the most of the opportunity to get to know the people around you, because you never know who's going to come back around and assist you in the future.
Yeah, well, and just that everyone moves all over the place. You just don't know where someone is going to be a year from now or even a month from now. So I kind of want to get into, when we did the first panel, a lot of the stuff that we were talking about, the Me Too movement was happening. Obviously, we've talked a lot about being female executives in this industry. How do you guys see the industry having grown since we did those panels to where we are now? Do you find that progress is a little bit easier to make? I mean, obviously, given everything that's going on in the world right now, too, with Black Lives Matter and making sure that we're just diversifying in the industry, not only just male, female, but with race as well. How do you feel like it's grown? Anybody want to dive into that one?
I remember actually this part of the panel last year because it was interesting, because we were talking about how even in the time that we've been in the industry, we've seen it shift and get better so much, just in that like everybody was tolerating less bad stuff just across the board. Just in that like interns are treated better than when I was an intern. And I think that's only continued in that just sensitivity is high, as it should be, because just, so much has happened in the past that really is unacceptable. So I think it is hypersensitive, and just continues to try and be more and more inclusive. But obviously we have to demand that on a daily basis. Otherwise it's not going to happen.
For sure.
Yeah, I mean, I think I've had like a sort of uniquely sort of blessed and charmed trajectory through entertainment. I think, you know, if I had come to the industry 20 years ago, it wouldn't be the case that I got to an agency and had, you know, a Black man who was an agent advocate for me and help me get my first job outside. I don't know that there would have been a Black agent in that position to do that. I think, you know, there have been so many women in powerful places. You know, Gray, I know you mentioned Hannah Minghella, who's now my boss and a huge advocate. I think I see positive change all around. Obviously, we have so far to go, but it's really, you know, I wish that all of my contemporaries had the same experience that I've had, you know, sort of having white men and Asian men be my advocate, and have that sort of like diverse cross-section of people intersect with my career up until this moment. And I wish that for everyone. And I think you know, I can speak for all of us when I say like, we're going to try our best to continue to make sure that's not an exception. It shouldn't be.
Yeah, for sure. Before we started recording, I was telling you guys a bunch of really detailed numbers and statistics, which I will not read all of, but the UCLA Hollywood diversity report that came out in February is really interesting because it talks a lot about how in 2018 and 2019 there were a lot of gains for female characters and like diverse characters on screen. There's a lot of improvement when it comes to more roles for women and people of color in the past 2 years, which is good. But behind the camera, it's still a really huge issue. So, you know, these numbers are pretty depressing, honestly, but the percentage of writing credits that women earned in 2019 was still only 17%, which is crazy. For like the top grossing movies, and for people of color it was 13%. So like we still have, it's interesting that like we've made huge gains in front of the camera. I think like for us as executives who really have more power to make a difference in like what stories are chosen and what movies are being made and what TV shows are being made, it's on us to take responsibility for making sure that behind the camera is as diverse, because it can't just be like a cosmetic fix for this problem to like trick audiences into thinking we're really doing diversity by putting more actors and characters that are diverse in our movies. So I think the other number that we were talking about that was pretty fascinating is that an analysis of the 11 major and mid-major studios, 91% of the C-level positions were white people. 82% were men. So it's like, you know, we still have a really long way to go in terms of like who's making the decisions about what stories are getting told. So I think it was Jeannette probably maybe, or Sam, who was talking about like, last year we talked a lot about putting those people on lists, like getting female filmmakers and people of color on the lists and getting them in front of our bosses who have more decision-making power than us, but we're now at a place where we need to figure out how to get those people hired, as opposed to just like having them on the list. So I don't know, what are your guys' thoughts on how we can do that more effectively?
Well, I think one thing that was really cool that we talked about on one of the other panels was mentors, and I think that the word ally has come up so much that they're really one and the same, and I love getting to watch the journey for all of you guys, that it's all something that you do every day at your companies, where you do, you know, talk to younger people or talk to people who maybe are just starting out, whatever age in the industry, and stand up with them, because I think that that's the biggest part of it. I watched this video, Ellen Pompeo was at an event, and it was a women's event, and she was talking about the fact that she's like, I love the fact that there's so many women here. She's like, but there's not enough color. And it's going to take people saying that and making it apparent in front of everyone all the time to make those changes. And so I think that what I think is so cool is that we can have a panel like this where we talk about it and share some of the things that, you know, personally you guys are doing, or some of the things that your companies are doing to help bring that to the forefront even more. And hopefully it ends up being where it's like you said, the numbers switching from getting better, that it's like every year they continue to get better. And if we need to focus on a different segment each year.
Right.
Yeah.
We're doing better in certain areas, but we got to work on other, the behind the scenes stuff more, obviously.
And I feel like even in the last few weeks, as the Black Lives Matter movement especially has like really come to light and become so mainstream, we've had so many conversations internally at Lord Miller, and I'm sure you guys have all had similar conversations at your companies about, yes, how do we move beyond putting people on lists to actually hiring these people? And we're having a specific meeting dedicated to it next week internally, where we're talking about like what are these specific ideas of how we can implement, putting our hiring where our mouths are. And I think it really does start with us. So much of our jobs is educating our bosses about new talent, writers, directors, performers, comedians, whatever it is. And it's the follow through. Like, just to praise my coworker today, like Aubrey sent out to the group, like, hey, there's this great Black illustrator that I found, and he would be specifically good for this project. And our bosses, Chris and Phil, were like, great. Like it's something that in just a few minutes, Aubrey was able to bring to light. And I'm sure we're going to hire that guy. So
yeah.
It's definitely like interesting, because I think, companies, there's not going to be an easy fix for this. Obviously, we've been talking about, people have been trying to make this happen for years and years and years, but everyone is feeling the urgency now, which is good, because they can come up more organically in conversation and hopefully not feel as uncomfortable as it might have in the past. But it is going to take, I think, just a ton of small actions every day. Like we as executives have to be thinking about that, and how, we can, I think it's going to take a lot of investing in people, and investing in people you believe in, and not just like throwing their hat in the ring, but like, if you hire, like, for example, on the TV side, if I decide to staff, a younger writer of color on a show, I'm going to be spending more time trying to make sure that person can move up through the ranks. Or can we develop something with that person if we like really believe in them? Is there something, another project we can do with them, so that those people aren't just going to be stuck on the lower rungs? Like, the part of the pipeline problem has been on the TV side that it's just hard for people of color to move up to the higher levels. So when you're looking for showrunners or creators who are like experienced enough to create a new show, it's kind of like very hard to find those people who technically have the experience. And I think it's going to take us investing time and energy into those people we believe in, and supporting them and making sure they can get to that level where, it's not just because this is a Black story that we're hiring this person. It's because they're good enough and they have the experience to hire them for any project, which Jeannette, we were talking about yesterday, which I thought was really interesting.
Mm-hmm.
I completely agree with everything you said, Aubrey. And I also think, so much of the time, women and minorities are not in the green light committees. We're not at the sort of like top tier, highest powered positions within these companies that decide, what gets made and what doesn't, and what goes forward. And so it is, it's a multifaceted issue. And, so much of the time, if your show is bought but never made, to your point, like those people then don't progress to have the experience to then, sell more shows and continue to, increase their ability to sort of like take on these bigger properties in the way that a lot of, white writers and showrunners have been able to, or on the feature side directors. I think it's really hard, because it's such a gut decision, the decision to put money behind a project and decide, this is a movie that I know in my gut people are going to want to see. And if you're a white man, it's hard to relate to what another minority group or a woman might see as a, $500 million box office hit. And I really think integrating those spaces is a crucial element to downstream, making sure that those people who, have stories in them that want to tell a story that is by a minority for a minority, not sort of, something that a C-suite executive who is a white male will perceive to be a valuable story for us. I think that, it's something that is, for us looking upwards at the people above us, it's a hard thing to know and understand how it can change, but it's definitely something that I become increasingly aware of.
I think everybody, it's like we all have our own experiences, so certain parts of it jump out as this is something where I really want to focus, this is somewhere I really want to work. And I think when you talk about the mentor stuff, even thinking about the idea of everyone wants to find the overnight success, whether it's a director or a writer or an actor or a producer for that matter, but it still takes the people at the top to take a chance on them. And really, when you look at it, even those people that you're taking a chance on still have a lot of credits to their name. They're not as green as people may think they are. So I think something that I've been thinking a lot about recently is that mentorship and thinking of ways that within the industry, maybe there's directors that will take another, like a newer director under their wing, and help guide them along the way, where I think that stuff happened a lot more where it's like apprenticeships. We have internships, but like an apprenticeship style thing that I think maybe could really help. I'm not sure. I know that Mette actually introduced all of us to Film to Future, which is a nonprofit that is kind of doing a lot of stuff along those lines, which I think could really help out the industry in the diversification of it. Do you want to tell us a little bit about that one?
Yeah, for sure. So for those of you who aren't familiar with Film to Future, it's a brilliant nonprofit organization that's based here in Los Angeles, and it targets kids in high school, just starting out in college, maybe freshman or sophomore years, who are trying to get a foot into the film industry, but come from backgrounds that don't really allow them to, and maybe they don't have the same kind of support that maybe all of us on this call have had throughout our careers. And it's basically a summer internship intensive where these kids, I think there's about 25 kids from LA, from lower income homes, who come and spend 3 weeks with Rachel Miller, who is the founder of Film to Future. And they basically learn the behind the scenes of filmmaking. They talk to panelists such as ourselves, filmmakers, costume designers, and they, throughout the 3 weeks, have to basically write, produce, edit, all that, their own short films. And the program has helped numerous kids get into college and paid internships, which is also very important that they're paid and not unpaid. And they're wonderful. And, if it's something any of you out there listening are interested in, I would recommend checking out their website, which is film2, as in the number, future.com. People are also welcome to make donations, but I feel like that is a great way of supporting a direct pipeline that is helping these young people make their way into the industry who don't have the opportunity otherwise.
That's great. I think just one other thing I wanted to say is just that, like, in terms of us, for all of these projects that we are working on developing, we are basically helping put together the team for all these projects. Like, our job is to, like somebody has already said, put people in front of our bosses, introduce them to people. And I think that's like a huge, with great power comes great responsibility, guys. And we are responsible for like making sure every day that we're like picking the best team for that. And I think what people are realizing a lot now, which is unfortunate that a lot of businesses hadn't realized in the past, is that like having different points of view on your team gives you like an overall better product. Like, I think a lot of people get worried about the appearance or the optics of taking something away from other people because you're prioritizing diversity. But like at the end of the day, I think all of us agree, and what we need to keep saying and making the conversation about is that it's more additive to your product and your result overall to have a very diverse group of people working on the thing.
Yeah. And also, I think, just to piggyback off of that, it's like the importance of just taking the meeting. And, just like sitting down with these people. And I think that starts with us, especially just sitting down with whoever reaches out, or if there's an agent or manager or any kind of contact that reaches out, it's like, I think I have somebody who's wonderful, who you should really know. And then, you sit down with them. Maybe they're right for the project that you're working on in the moment, but maybe it's just starting that relationship with that creator. And then you find the right project down the line. And then I think it's just important that we all keep championing these people, even for projects that aren't female specific, or, it's not a specific story. It's just like, we were talking about Venom the other day. I forget who brought that up. That was Sam.
It was like, I'll raise my hand.
Yeah, it was me.
No, I think we were just saying how, at some point, hopefully later in down the line, it's when we're creating these lists for movies, we just want these to be a list of great writers, and already within that list are diverse name, female names, and all of that. It's all already there. But the issue is to be able to get to that point, we need to give the opportunities to diverse writers and to female writers and to up and coming writers. We need to give them the jobs, otherwise they aren't going to grow and learn like any of us. We all need to be given a chance to become better at whatever it is that we want to do in our careers. So, you know, that for all of us is the ultimate goal, that at some point we look down at the list and we're just like, oh my God, it's actually happened. Like, a totally eclectic group of people, it's amazing. But in the meantime, there is still a ton of work to do on that now. And I think, just to speak to a little bit what we've been saying, is like, I think it's also like our job to like put a bit of pressure on the studios and the financiers, because we can champion someone, but they have to pay for it, and completely understand that it's their finances that are going to make the film. But that's the only way that these people are going to get an opportunity to do a big budget, you know, superhero movie or whatever it is, or tell their story. So yeah.
Well, I think so much of this conversation can feel like, obviously there is a lot of work to be done, and it can feel like you're never making progress, or it's like tiny baby steps. But I do think there's, you know, just from our conversations and this group in general, we all do have those positive moments and the things we're proud of and the things we're excited about that are coming, or seeing things happening where, you know, I just think about, for me, where it's like putting my money where my mouth is, where it's like, okay, if I'm going to, quite literally, where do I spend my money? If I want a company to support a new director or actor, make sure that you're watching those shows. Make sure that you're going, not right now going to the movies, but when you're allowed to, and buying those books. And, you know, it feels like a little bit of extra work, but then when you see more of those voices being mainstream, it feels so good. Yeah. And even for me, where it's like, this is my proud of myself this year thing, was that for the companies that I work for, you know, as talent, a lot of times you don't really get a say in what the company as a whole is doing. And so I kind of made it a point that I was like, I'm going to ask. I put my voice with something that it's really important for me to be able to say that the company that's paying me, that I'm working with, supports me and supports the things that I value. And then I get to decide what I want to do with that. So I think that's something that I hope a lot more people start feeling comfortable doing. But for each of you guys, I kind of want to jump in on the positivity note and be like, are there things that you're proud of, or, you know, directors or writers that you're like, oh my gosh, or something that you've seen within this year and changing diversity that you're really pumped on?
A couple of things. I'm very excited for people to one day see what we've been working on our live action Spider-Man shows, which have been announced, but we're still in the early stages on, so I can't say too much. But I think that hopefully those shows will feel very exciting and represent what we are discussing in a really organic way, which is cool. And I'm very grateful to Phil and Chris and for Sony for supporting us and wanting to do those things and make a very different type of superhero show. But in terms of things I've been watching recently that I think are really exciting and I want people to check out are Betty on HBO. Has anyone watched Betty? So fun.
I haven't watched it. I saw it on your Instagram.
Oh my God, it's so good. I love it. Also, I May Destroy You is really great. Both those things are HBO. So honestly, but Betty is free. Like, the pilot's available on Instagram if you want to watch it. No, and you don't have to pay for HBO. But both those things just feel like such unique stories and really refreshing and exciting to me. So those are the two things I'm pumped about right now.
Cool. Jeannette, do you want to go next?
Sure. I mean, I feel I'm just really inspired in this moment by how Bad Robot has handled, you know, what's happening with COVID and you know, with the sort of recent protests and everything that's happening there. You know, donating, JJ and Katie donating $10 million to anti-racist causes. It really is sort of backed up by like what we're doing internally, and I'm sort of, you know, aware that we just made our new deal, so a lot of the people we're talking to and a lot of the things that we're in progress on now, I can't say a ton about, but I'm very excited about the diversity that's represented there, and by the sort of spirit and desire to do more that is female and more that is diverse. And, you know, I have huge hopes for how the slate will look and what movies we'll be putting out 2 years from now, as soon as we can make movies again after COVID. But yeah, I think I'm also super pumped about, you know, seeing more females, especially Black women, show running and entering that space. You know, Michaela Coel, to your plug there, Aubrey, I'm obsessed with. You know, Stephanie Robinson, another, you know, sort of young Black female showrunner who I think is enormously talented. It's really great to see, you know, people aren't having to pay their dues in some inordinate way as much anymore. There are these, you know, sort of exceptions to that precedent, and it's great content that's coming from it. So I'm excited.
What about you, Sam?
I would say at Skybound, it's been, you know, kind of focusing on the IP and going back to like the root of like what the story is going to be. So just trying to find, our editorial team has been doing a really incredible job of like finding more unique stories, diverse writers, diverse creators, and really championing them in a way that we can do on a like comic book level scale. Like it is cheaper than making a movie. So that's something I feel like, you know, if we can start there and give these like opportunities to stories that haven't been told yet, or writers that aren't as experienced, and then use that as like proof of like, okay, now look how well this is done. So I think that's something that we've been really pushing forward. And also just like spending time researching, you know, we do a bunch of animation. So animation houses from around the world, and trying to build some relationships with animation houses, because there aren't that many in America, and there are a ton of incredible ones around the world. So trying to bring those into the, you know, conversation as well.
Mm-hmm. What about you, Gray?
I'm excited about a lot of things. We were, you know, hoping to shoot more movies this year.
What happened?
What?
Oh, no, it's a really long story. But you know, we do have one in the can that I'm really excited about, which is our G.I. Joe reboot at Paramount, and it's starring Henry Golding. It's primarily an Asian cast, which is something I'm very proud of. I mean, I love the script. I love the project, and I'm so excited to share it with the world. But you know, we're working on a lot of things, so that hopefully we can have a lot teed up post COVID. Really excited about our Dungeons and Dragons movie, which we're doing with Goldstein Daily. They did game night. Really been enjoying working with some other filmmakers like Jonathan Entwistle, who's doing Power Rangers for us, and Dean Deblois, who did the How to Train Your Dragon movies, is doing Micronauts for us. Yeah, there's a lot to be excited about. You know, it's just about that anticipation to shoot it. Can we shoot it now, please?
Well, and I know a lot of it is, you know, like Aubrey was saying, there's stuff you can't talk about. So if there's stuff you're excited about, like totally talk about the shows you're watching, or if you saw a film that you're like, oh my gosh, she was amazing, I hope we get to work with them one day, or just that kind of stuff too, because I know, you know, we chat off the record, but this is
this is on the record.
So I'm going to trying to get little tidbits here and there, what you guys will give. But what about you, Nikki?
I'm also excited about a lot of things. One I'm most excited for is our project Artemis, based on Andy Weir's novel, who wrote The Martian. And this incredible writer, Geneva Robertson-Dore, is adapting it for us. And probably the thing I'm most excited about it is it has a 20-something girl of Middle Eastern descent as the hero of a sci-fi novel, soon to be a movie, which is something we haven't really seen before. Mm-hmm. And we're really dedicated to that faithful casting once we get to that point. Also, it's going to be shot in 1/6 gravity. Well, so it looks like it's in 1/6 gravity on the moon. So not going to be an easy project, but it's going to be a big, fun endeavor.
Are you guys going to go to space with Tom Cruise to shoot?
Yes. Yes, we will.
Bring us with you, please.
Yeah. Field trip, guys.
I'm down. Our next panel will be in space.
Yes.
Mette, bring us home.
Yeah.
I'm really excited about a lot of things that I'm working on. Unfortunately, haven't been announced yet, so I can't talk about them. But there's another great organization that I do want to bring up. They are called Women Wednesdays, and it is created by a dear friend of mine called Carly Kleinbart, who works over at Mandeville Films. She's a force to be reckoned with. But the exciting thing is that Women Wednesdays is actually starting a mentorship program for BIPOC executives and helping them get their foot in the door and like pairing them up with folks in the industry that can kind of help them excel in the industry. So they are another great organization. They just started out being like a weekly screening here in LA for women directors, and they would screen a female-directed movie once a week, and then it was also just an idea to get like executives together and to keep the conversation going, and also just like educate executives in the industry about how many great filmmakers are out there that are women, happen to be women, that we should be considering. But you can also find more information about them on www.women-wednesday.com. And
oh, we also have an email address now.
Yes.
So if anybody
I'll
needs
get to it. Don't worry.
Oh, yeah. Your job.
So usually on these panels, we get to take questions from the audience. And in this case, obviously, we can't really do that because we're on Zoom or we're video chatting with you guys. So I know that one of our panels, and a lot of the ladies have done this, but chatted with people afterwards, gotten their emails, communicated with them. So we thought it would be cool to set up an email that you guys can reach out to everybody at. It's entertainmentisfemale@gmail.com. So if you guys have questions, or if you want to specifically ask one of the ladies something, or just general stuff, send it to that email address, and one of us will try to get back to you with some good help and info to keep the conversation going.
We're so legit, you guys. We're so
we have
email account.
Also, big thank you to Tiffany Smith for being our moderator and coming back every year and every Comic-Con. We love you and appreciate you so much.
I'm so happy to do it. I literally am like, we'll chat, and I'm like, hey, is it okay that the talent is just a part of this conversation? So, and also I just want to let everybody know, if there's social media stuff that you guys want to shout out to have people follow, go for it. If not, like I said, we've got the email address that everyone can reach out to. So if you guys want to jump it. Anyone want to share socials?
My social is very boring.
I don't have any social right now, so.
Well, I mean, we don't have any real life
Tiffany,
social.
what's your social? Tiffany, what's your social?
I mean, you guys can find me. It's Tiffany, just Tiffany_Smith, easy peasy. All right. Well, I want to say a huge thank you to our whole panel. I feel like so much more we could get into. 40 minutes goes by so fast, but thank you to Mette and Nikki and Gray and Sam and Aubrey and Jeannette for hanging out and sharing some of your awesome knowledge with everybody who's watching. And I hope that you guys are all having a good virtual Comic-Con. Hopefully we'll all see each other in person next year. I'm Tiffany Smith. Thanks so much.
Bye, guys.
Bye.